So, this is Stephen Shan from Wemyss Malts. He's demonstrating us how to blend a whiskey, and you're blending which one?
I'm going to be blending Spice King. So Spice King is a blended malt, so not a single malt, not a blended scotch, but a combination of a select few single malts from around Scotland that we combine together to make a complex, spicy but sweet blended malt whiskey that we call Spice King. Wemyss Malts, the Wemyss family are an independent bottler of whiskey, and we specialise in crafting small batch blended malt whiskies such as Spice King, The Hive, Peat Chimney and other limited editions. What I'll do here today is I have little laboratory scale samples of different single malts, and I'll show you our kind of general process of how we combine these together to get to something equivalent to the Spice King that people buy, know and love. So when we blend, it's a three-stage process that we adopt. We call it making the base, supporting the base, and then adding the signature malt. And that's the three-step process to crafting one of our blends. So the first part, building the base, I'm going to use 3 different whiskies in equal quantity to make half of the blend, and that's called the base. The first whiskey is from the Lowlands. It's light, it's delicate, it's crisp. Some might assume that because it's the lightest of the whiskies that we use in the blend, they'd actually just get completely lost. This delicate citrus note really elevates and lightens everything that goes into the whiskey. So that's going to be the first element of my blend. I'm going to make 200 millilitres in total. I have a very complex recipe sheet here that I've just made, so I know I can do a small scale blend for you. But yeah, we're going to do 33 mils. This is the exciting part. Always have to be precise, because here, you know, 1 millimetre is 1 millimetre, but then if we make the blend and scale it up, when we start talking about cask quantities, you're talking about huge, huge variations. So that's 33 mil of the light, crisp, Lowland single malt. Then the next whiskey is from Speyside. Now there's not just one Speyside style. You can have light, delicate Speysides, you can have heavy, oily, rich Speysides, and this is before we even talk about cask maturation, just spirit character. This particular Speyside, you see here, it says worm tub distilled. So when you recondense the vapours coming off of the stills, you can use a shell and tube condenser, and that by and large makes quite a light, delicate bodied spirit. But if you use a worm tub, you get real body and heaviness coming from this old-fashioned worm that recondenses and doesn't give a lot of copper contact. What that's going to do to the blend is it's going to help give it body, and it's almost, if I get a fresh glass, 1 second. I take a little bit of this Speyside, swirl it in the glass. From that worm tub distilled, you'll see it's got huge body. It just sticks to the side of the glass. This is the body. This is really going to help build the mouthfeel of the whiskey, and it's almost like the glue that binds it together. If you give it a smell, the smell is gingery. It's heavy. This is sulfur. Sulfur is not a negative. Sulfur from a cask can be quite a negative effect, but sulfur from fermentation and then from distillation, this gives us big, heavy base. Think of eating raw ginger is not going to be pleasant. But if you add ginger to baking or ginger to a stir fry, it's giving depth and spice and aroma. That's what we're getting from the flavour here, and then we're getting the body from that Speyside worm tub as well. So again, 33 mils. Just get down low, see the elevation. Also the liquid can peak at the edge of the tube, so you've got to measure it from the base. Go, 3. So it's 33 mils of my Speyside, my worm tub. What I'll do, just as another quick exercise, I'm making a blend here with quite a lot of single malts. I just want to show you blending in its simplest form. If I take 10 mils of that light, crisp, delicate Lowlands. Just 10 milliliters, 1 cl. So, 1 part Lowlands. It's got lemon, cut grass, very, very light. Then I have Highland Central Malt. So, whiskey from the central part of Highland. It's really malty, spicy, quite deep in flavour. If I take 10 ml of this, and combine it, 1 part Lowlands, 1 part Central Highlands, start to get the aroma of orange. Orange didn't exist just in the Highlands or just in the Lowlands, but combining that citrus with the deeper, heavier, maltier character, I start to get something similar to the aroma of orange. And that is blending apricot, yeah? That is blending in its simplest form, taking A plus B to make C, to make something different from its form. So that's just a two element blend there. We're making something a little bit more complex with Spice King. 4 different regions with several different components. So the next part of making the base, to get back to Spice King, is going to be using that same Highland Central Malt. Deep, malty, cereal rich character. And that's 33 mils. So equal components Lowlands, equal components Highland Central, and equal components that Worm Tub Speyside whiskey. And now we have made our base. So that is 50% of the total blend. We have
Is there a difference when you take the other ones first? The last one first?
The placement, no, not really. They're all coming in equal components, yeah. They all come together in the vat. And actually part of what we do and part of blending for consistency is keeping some of the liquid. So we don't bottle everything that you blend right there and then. You keep some of it. So if this is the 2018 blend, we take half and bottle it, and then we blend it with the other liquid as well. So 2018 has some of 2017. 2017's liquid has some of 2016's liquid, and so on and so on and so on. And that's how we try and aim to get consistency. A blender has to battle against variation. Whiskey can be variable. The wood that a spirit sits in is natural, therefore variable. Your supply of liquids, the types of distilleries might be different. You know, this Speyside Worm Tub, oily bodied and spicy. What happens if I don't get that Speyside Worm Tub next year? We've got to swap it out and change it. So maybe I would take a heavy bodied whiskey like Dal Ewan, but it doesn't have the spice, it's got the body. So then if I take Dal Ewan and then maybe a Ben Nevis, which is more spicy and gingery, and combine the spice and ginger of Ben Nevis with the body of Dal Ewan, I'd get back to where I was here. But that's using 2 malts instead of 1 single malt. And that's why on the bottles we never say exactly 10 whiskies or exactly 11 whiskies, because we might have to tailor and adjust the recipe year on year to try and keep consistency. So that is our base. The next thing we're going to do is support the base. Another terminology is called giving it backbone. So we're just selecting a couple of really characterful, distinct whiskies that are going to help back it up and give it some guts and move the whiskey into the territory of Spice King. So I'm using 2 base malts here. A medium peated Islay whiskey and a whiskey from the north of the Highlands that has a kind of waxy, oily character, and it's quite dry. When you blend with Islay whiskey, you have to be incredibly careful. Anything under 5%, all you're really doing, or what you should be aiming to do, is amplify the flavors that are already in the whiskey. And if you, the peat, yeah, the peat is going to give it heaviness and lift. If you think of a smoky whiskey, you get the initial top notes of taste, could be sweet, could be salty, could be whatever, and then the smoke comes in the finish. It comes after the fact. So if I drink that Lowlands, we call it a short whiskey. You know, the flavors are nice, pleasant, crisp, but they exist on the palate just for a couple of seconds. If I drink an Islay whiskey, the finish is much, much longer. You can taste it the next day, you know? It's big, big stuff. So just adding a little bit, no more than 10%, we're gonna give the whiskey length and we're gonna give it depth. We're pulling, you know, imagine just pulling those flavors out and deepening them. That's what the Islay's doing. And that's what Islay whiskies have always been for in terms of blending. Just a little bit goes a long way. If you want to make an overtly smoky whiskey, you go above 10%. Something like our peat chimney has about 30–35% Islay in there, so it makes it much, much smokier. But we don't use 100% Islay in a blend because we still want balance from the other regions. So, all we're going to put in is 20 milliliters. That's it. That's all we need. Sorry, to give you some context, I'm making 200 milliliters in total, so 10% Islay. Now, at this stage, the smoke is noticeable. But when you blend a whiskey, you don't just bottle it straight away. For today, you know, we're blending it and you're going to taste it. So the overall blend is going to taste a little bit smoky. But you leave that whiskey in a vat for several weeks, and that's what you do. You blend and then you vat. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, hopefully longer, and that's going to mellow out. All those flavors are going to combine together. So the smoke stops being so overt, and it just becomes part of the whole blend. The next support whiskey, Highland Northern. Again, it's got a nice big body, heavy waxy character, and a little bit of dryness. So it's going to start balancing out some of the sweeter elements from earlier on. What? Overfilled?
That's again 10 milliliters, isn't it?
20, 20, so 10%, 10% to make 20% in total. So the base is half, 50%, 20% total of backbone, but it's 2 parts, so 10, 10. And then we have the signature, which I'll talk about in a second, and that's 30. So now we have supported the base. We've taken our just good quality, rounded, almost like the canvas, the foundation of the whiskey, and we've started to move it in a particular direction. We've started to bring in savoury elements, a little bit of smoke, a little bit of dryness. This whiskey is now quite far away from something like the Hive. The Hive would be going in a different direction. That would be more sweet, more rounded, more fruity. But there's one final really important step to finishing this blend, and that is adding the signature malt. Other blenders might call it your dressing malt or your top dresser. And we're going to put 30% of our signature malt into this whiskey. The whiskey is it's quite a mouthful, is a West Coast Highland Islands worm tub distilled medium peated single malt. I don't disclose the whiskies because 2 reasons. One, I might have it 1 year, I might not get it the next. So there's no point saying I have it and we maybe have to swap out with something else, but we have quite good filling contracts with various whiskey producers around Scotland, and that leads to the second reason is a lot of the whiskey that we buy from these whiskey producers, they have their own brands. These whiskies exist as single malts. They don't want us unveiling what we put into our whiskey. We don't want to upset them. We want to keep our very good filling contracts with them, so we don't disclose the whiskies, and it gives us flexibility if we do need to change out and put in something else to keep the blend consistent. That's just part and parcel of it. So that is my West Coast Highland Island worm tub distilled medium peated whiskey. And this is going to make about a third of the total blend, 60%. Oily, peppery, a kind of salinity. I mean, there's not actually salt in the whiskey. Sodium doesn't pass through the stills, but the sulfurs, the peat, combine together to give you a savoury element that's indicative of saltiness. And Highland peat, which is a slightly different flavour from the heavy medicinal iodine peat of Islay. This one is a bit more kind of herbal and burnt wood, peppery kind of peat. So, 50% base, 3 equal parts, Lowland, Speyside, Highland Central, Speyside's worm tub. Just 10% of that Islay to amplify the flavours that are already there. A little bit of the Highland Northern to add some waxiness, increase the body and some of the savoury elements, the dryness. And then the key to the blends, Highland, Island, West Coast, worm tub distilled, medium peated. So, we have now created our Spice King. It's a little different because it's a fresh blend, and this Spice King we're taking whiskey from the years prior and pulling them together, but we still have a lot of those basic compounds. A blender uses their nose. You know, there's too much whiskey to go through in the day in terms of sampling and quality control. You use your nose for nosing the elements of quality control. When you use samples, you get them for the first time, you add a lot of water. Traditional blenders, when I watched them at first, they overwater their whiskey. They double, they triple the amount of water because they want to stress test the whiskey to unveil any sulfurs or impurities in it. But then they use their nose. The only time you taste is when you finish the blend. You want to taste it and see if you've got to the same place as you were before. So, may I borrow your glass? So this is Spice King here. And take another glass. Excuse me, stealing all the glasses. Two slightly different glasses. Wouldn't normally do this, but I'm improvising a little bit. So that is the blend that I've just made here today, and then that is the Spice King that is bottled and is available to buy. Aromatic, spicy, peppery, a little bit of sweetness. Sweetness is kind of more on the fruity side. And we're quite similar with the Spice King here as well. The key is to get that peppery note on the aroma. When it comes to taste, I'm looking for a couple of different stages. I want the initial sweetness coming through as a kind of orangey sweetness. Then you get spice. Peppery, kind of tingles on the palate. A little bit of salinity, a savoury edge to juxtapose the sweetness. And then that combination of Highland and Islay smoke coming through on the finish. Sweet, and the pepper. Yep, and then the smoke starts to come through. It's got those elements. And that's the best thing about a blended malt. Oh, it's a little bit too smoky, just a tiny bit. But hopefully over time, if that blend sat, it would start to mellow down a little bit. And really that's the beauty of blended malt. A single malt is a focused look at one type of whiskey, which is great. But blended malt, we are mixing in multiple regions and building these little different stages and shifts in flavour. And that's why a blended malt is different to a single malt, because you can build these complexities in there. And yeah, that's it. That is my blended Spice King. Please look out for it wherever you can in independent whiskey shops and give it a try. Blended malt, it's interesting stuff to try. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. It was most interesting stuff.
No problem.
It was a splendid demonstration of how to blend a whiskey. Thank you very much and enjoy your day here.
Cheers. Thank you.